Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Not Mayors podcast. Today we have a very interesting subject to talk about today. We also have a few guests and some new people on the crew. So without further ado...
I hate you so much for fucking doing that accent.
Listen, it's the thing that just comes out of my mouth naturally, alright?
We all want to die when you do that. All of us want to die.
Then my job is successful. I want to kill you all violently. According to some comments, I'm destined to murder you all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah, that was a thing.
Yeah, the Simpsons thing. Yeah. Brennan, what are we talking about today?
All right, so today, as our main guest, we also have a couple technicians in the background as well working, but as far as our on-camera guest, we have Marcus Foreman, who worked as the assistant director for Living Nightmares episodes 1, 3, and 4. And today's topic is actually inspired by a conversation I had with him probably around 2 years ago now. You probably don't even remember the conversation, but I don't know. You were driving me home from something. I don't remember what. Doesn't really matter. And somehow we got on the topic of scary movies, and you were talking about how there's this one person you were talking to about some horror movie. I forget what the movie was, but she was saying, oh yeah, that movie scared me so much. And you were thinking to yourself, I mean, really? You're an adult. Like, do adults really get scared by movies? Like, you can understand it's like feeling like suspense, or if a movie creates like a really creepy tone, or there's like something that just sticks in your mind afterwards, but actually being scared of a movie as an adult just seemed weird to you, and I can understand that as well. And so for today's topic, I kind of wanted to talk about all of our personal philosophies of what actually makes a scary movie, or what does scary actually mean to us. Because I definitely feel like I have something a lot different from the three of you. Mark probably has something different from the three of us. Zach definitely has something different from the three of us.
So now we get an opportunity to, and now that we have the topic out of the way, we get an opportunity to introduce our guest. And we'll have him give an opportunity to tell about his amazing involvement with all of our stuff as well, and then we'll also introduce the awesome people that are behind the camera today as well. So Marcus has been a tremendous help to us and many different things. He's probably the best damn assistant director that I've ever worked with, and I've worked with a lot of them. I would give him an excellent compliment, and I'll do it in a public space. He's a guy who knows that we're on a timetable, because that's what ADs do. There's many memes making fun of that, but the Marcus in particular is a guy that knows the timetable's going on, but he never lets anybody in on it. He knows what needs to get done, but he makes everybody else feel comfortable around him, and he knows how to put gentle time cones. Like, you know, you'll be traveling down and he's like, is a cone here? We're going to keep you driving on this path. He doesn't say a word. He just puts a traffic cone there, and he keeps us on a good path, and everything's relaxed. It's a light tone. It's a fun time. And also too, funny enough, keeping me entertained and in the moment, and as you know, when I was acting with episode 4, which I really appreciated because it was fucking 3 a.m, and I created an ulcer for myself driving to the set that day. But we'll talk about that in another podcast. But without further ado, Marcus, if you want to tell us all about you, sir, and introduce our guest.
Wow, thanks. That was nice.
You're welcome.
I met these two guys at film school. Met this guy on this guy's set. I've been working with them ever since. I'm a writer, director, actor, kind of whatever you need. Funny, AD is not my preferred choice, but and when I first heard of the position, I'm like, God, that sounds terrible. It sounds awful. You got to be on everybody's back. But having worked with ADs that just get on your nerves, I realized I don't want to be that AD. I want to be the AD that you
want to be a
describe.
good AD.
Yeah. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
You're very, very welcome.
It's funny you say you didn't want that position, because I never wanted... Like, I remember being in directing and pre-production, it's like, fuck, being a producer sucks. I don't want to do that. No, look at me.
Yeah, funny how that works.
Yeah, I lost my hair because of this job.
So we got our very very special friend in the back. We also and a new helper as well. Hannah and Vinny are hanging out in the back. Switch it over and then.
Mark, what's your password?
Of course
Can we cut this part?
yes,
I can cut it,
yes,
just
we
say
can.
it.
Yeah, we can.
I'm going to put his password online. Vinny, introduce yourself. Mark, what's your password?
What's your password?
And also, we do have some very, very special guests hanging out and pressing the buttons and controlling the sound, which I have to give them a lot of credit because this is their first time doing it. Vinny and Hannah are both behind there, so if you want to switch it over to yourselves and wave, I know there's a tiny bit of a delay.
Hello.
That was so weird. It's like, what the hell? All right, now switching back to us.
Y'all are getting too loud.
No, I hear you. So without further ado, now that we have all the introductions going, I think Marcus gets to start it just because he is the guest. But you do have the option to pass in the event that you don't want to talk about it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this question.
Yeah, I find that strange being adults being scared by movies. Now, jump scares. Well, I will jump. I'm a jumper. I'll jump out of my seat. Sure,
And
sure.
that's a natural human reaction
Exactly.
to the sounds and such that are put in. But that alone, to me, doesn't make a movie scary.
Yeah.
No, it definitely doesn't. And to me, that's pretty easy to do a jump scare in a movie. What's harder is to make something that makes your skin crawl, that makes you tense up, that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. That's the stuff I really love in a horror movie.
That can create that kind of tone.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Before we go into that, like, what is your definition of like an actual jump scare? Because I feel like I kind of differ from most people in terms of jump scares.
They've been pretty
Because like
black
to
and
me,
white.
Yeah, anything
because
that
like
makes
to
me jump, really.
Because like to me, a jump scare is like the cheap scare that has nothing to do with the plot, like the cat in the closet. Whereas a scare that still makes you jump, but actually has something to do with the plot, I actually don't count those as jump scares.
Okay.
And actually, the conversation that inspired that change in my philosophy, it was actually in Facebook comments when I was talking about The Conjuring. And I thought that movie actually did a really good job at creating a really creepy tone, and I thought it was a good, scary movie. It set out to scare people, and it created a scary tone. My thoughts on the sequel and the other Conjuring universe movies do not share that critique, but this person came on commenting, it's just jump scares, it's not good. And that made me go, I mean, there wasn't really anything that was disconnected from the plot. Like, Mark, you're probably the biggest fan of The Conjuring, but
I agree with this. So I think you and I have talked about this a couple times when it comes to jump scares, and I'm going to break it down to cheap jump scares and earned jump scares.
Okay.
Or if you really want to get into the phrasing, it's scares that make you jump, or it's jump scares.
That's a good one too.
For me, The Conjuring earned its jump scares, and there's a lot of movies that earn the jump scares, and I think most horror fans could tell the fucking difference between when it's a cheap one and when it's an actual legitimately earned one.
Yeah.
The perfect example is actually in The Conjuring, the clap. Like that
was a good one.
that was earned. That was earned based on tension. Now
full tension, and also is based on something that was already previously set up with the characters. There was a setup and a payoff.
Correct. And honestly, too, one that wasn't earned, and it actually isn't a movie that I love, but it wasn't earned. It's a kind of a cheap jump scare. Was in Scream when she runs into Skeet Ulrich's character in the hallway, and then they kind of jump. I was like, that's fucking cheap. Like, there's other jump scares in that movie that work well and they're earned. But like when a fucking chair goes through the window in the Drew Barrymore scene, that was earned. That one was just cheap. It was that was Wes Craven looking at his watch, going, it's only been it's been a little bit of time since somebody got scared, so let's just shove that in there. So so there's a lot of things that break down what is earned and what is not earned, and actually that's not only in jump scares, but that's in a lot of things. Like, is the gore earned? Is the tension earned? Jaws, tension is earned throughout the entire movie. The and then Friday the 13th, the gore in that movie is earned. You felt like it got earned.
And it's not even that gory of a movie,
No,
especially compared to what comes after.
It's
no
not.
shit.
And then fucking Saw, like the later ones, that shit it's not earned. There's no tension. There's no, like, you just came there to see, like, let's see how creative this shit is gonna get.
That's literally the only reason you watch Saw movies. It's just like, all right, what creative way is this motherfucker gonna die now?
You're talking about the older ones. The first one I thought was brilliant.
Oh no, the first three, I will say they are genuinely good movies and good story. But after that, I'm just like, all right, I just want to see people die in creative ways. That's literally it.
I've got my issues with the third one, but I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean the third one definitely has its problem, but I still very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of very cheap thrills and cheap scares. But it all depends. Like, there's some people. And I just got a text from a coworker. I was literally promoting Living Nightmares episode 3, and I did it to a text chat. And she's like, "Well, how scary is this?" And just as a little background, E.T. made me anxious. And I'm like, who are you?
There was a point where E.T. was going to be a horror movie directed by Tobe Hooper.
That would.
We'll talk about that later.
but I mean, like, it's so personalized.
It is.
And funny enough, the story that I get brought up, if anybody asks me this question, and I'm gonna let Zach, because this is Zach's story, is when your mom was explaining why she didn't let you watch Jaws. That's very personalized. What makes you scary is so personal and so primal. It's dependent. That's why Fear Factor had like 20 different things. We're trying to capture. We're going to capture somebody's fears. In this, we're going to get a general blanket, and then we're going to get somebody. But I wanted you to tell that story about what your mom why she let you watch some things, but not other things.
So, I mean, it was mainly Jaws. It's like I was able to watch Friday the 13th, Hellraiser, all those fucking movies when I was a kid, no problem. But Jaws, I wasn't allowed to, and the reason being is because I knew that all those horror movies, they're fake. Freddy's not real, Jason's not real, Pinhead, it's all bullshit. Jaws, for the most part, it's a shark. It's real. Could absolutely happen. Has happened before. Well, not the big shark just killing humans for the sake of killing humans. I mean, it's based off a true story, but, muddles some of the events. Either way, it's like, that's a shark. They're real. So it's a whole different ballgame. And then, it's just like, maybe I'd start to think, oh, what else is real? Is Freddy real? Is Jason real? So for a long time, I wasn't allowed to watch that movie, and that's why.
Interesting.
I think that and again, it's all very personalized on what you deem as scary. I mean, like, I think The Strangers is one of the most effective of that genre, because it's random and it could happen to anybody.
And yet that movie bored me to tears.
I know, I think there's some, of course, the movie as itself, but the concept behind it, when she said, "Why are you doing this?" It's just because you were home.
The trailer's scarier than the movie.
I know, it's funny how that works.
Yeah, that movie was, I gotta agree with him on that.
I figured, and they didn't want to be on camera. I knew they would have things to say.
Vinny loves the camera.
We're both camera whores, but whatever. But anyway, I'm very curious, too, and I have a question for you, specifically, because you're the only one that has this perspective. Has your perspective changed on what is scary? Maybe through cinema and through, other things, before you had kids and then after you had kids? Because that's got to affect some shit with how you run the gamut of what's scary and what's not scary.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious to hear your perspective on that.
So I've thought about this because I've been thinking about this topic this week, and as I was telling him, I reached a point in life where nothing scared me anymore. Not because I'm Mr. Brave, I just didn't care. I don't know if you want to keep this in there, how dark you want to get, but when you think of suicide every day for couple decades, you just don't care. So what the hell's gonna scare me? Now, what scares me is anything happening to my kids. It's terrifying. In fact, I had a friend who said, nothing scared me until I had kids. So, that's the scariest thing to me, is something bad happened to my kids.
And I think that's a funny thing, and I was thinking about this topic too, and it's about specifically that there was, and I know some people will roll their eyes when I say this, but there's one specific element of zombie movies in particular, or maybe like mass vampire movies or things like that is the feeling of feeling powerless to defend people that you love. Like, especially people that are weaker, like my niece and my nephew and my sisters. And, and then a lot of times in zombie movies, that concept is brought up many, many times about, I can't remember which movie it was, but it was literally a guy who saw his daughter and his wife, being, about to be attacked by zombies. And then there's an open window there. And he chose to jump out the window and then let his wife and daughter get it. So it's like, and then also too, in one of the movies, and this is my problem of mixing up zombie movies like I'm shuffling cards, but there's another one where their 2-year-old daughter gets infected and then attacks the wife's husband, and it's just that particular, and yes, zombie movies can get very redundant and very much, but that concept that happens is actually scares the shit out of me as a person, because the Freddys and the Jasons of the world and everything else, especially the Freddys, that's very personalized. That motherfucker's gonna come for me in my dreams. That's my dreams. The and then Scream and Chucky, I just throw him out the window, but when you're dealing with multiple things and it becomes the tides turn against you to control the situation, that's when things get really, really scary. At least that's a very personal thing with me. When it's one-on-one, it's very different, or even 1-on-5. But when it's 1-on-100 and you can't control the situation, and at the end of the day, you don't really give a shit about you. You give a shit about the people that you can defend. But when you can't do that, you can't defend them. It's fucking horrifying.
You're making me think of The End of the Mist.
Yeah.
That was an ending.
Yeah.
And some really shitty timing too.
Whoops.
Whoops. That's the biggest fucking whoops in cinematic history. Like, holy shit,
dude. They're like, how they're making those memes.
It was a good ending though. I mean, even Stephen King said, "I wish I thought of that."
Man, that's a compliment if I've ever heard one.
The novella just ends with them driving off.
Yeah. Heading towards,
There's been a lot of fucking like memes with Casey Anthony about like if you have kids that you get an extra $1,400 in stimulus check. And it's her with a face going. She did make that meme with the guy from the Mist. It's just going whoops. I am a terrible person. But if you don't find humor in dark places, then there's just no point.
Why are you here?
Yeah, exactly. Wow, that was cute. Did you guys practice that? But no,
fuck you.
But I gotta hear it from Zach though. I gotta hear some shit from you on you're hard pressed to find anything.
Dude, it's fucked up. Like nothing.
Why?
I don't care. That's really that's my biggest thing. I don't care. I can separate myself from so much shit. Like, if the zombie apocalypse were to happen today, it's like, all right, I'm just going on a fucking murder spree. I don't give a shit. So it's like, I mean, shit. I don't know. Things don't scare me. Murder, I love it. But I'm dead serious. Like, if something scares me, I don't know what the fuck it is. Like, legitimately.
Okay, I'm not scared because, like I said, I don't know what it's like to be, but creeped out. Weird, like, ooh, that's like.
I mean, there are things that disgust me, but it's like I can handle it.
Nothing raises the hair on the back of your neck. Nothing gives you the titties.
You know what I think?
I mean, other than people eating mayonnaise, not really. Like, seriously, Homer, you fucking monster! I want you to burn in hell for all eternity, you piece of precursor shit.
I was actually talking to my girlfriend about this topic yesterday as well, and she kind of landed on. Other types of movies other than horror movies typically tend to scare and disturb more than the actual horror movies. Horror movies, for the most part, feel more roller coaster ride. Like you're along for the ride. Whereas like there are some other movies, I forget which ones were brought up. In fact, actually, I'm not even sure if we did bring up any specific examples. No, there was a Sarah Silverman movie that she brought up. I can't remember the title, but that one's very true to life. It's about Sarah Silverman fighting like alcoholism, and that one's more about like the actual real world situation. And something like that tends to be more disturbing or more ingrained in your brain afterwards in terms of making you feel something than the roller coaster ride of a horror movie. And I was talking about what I think is my scariest movie, which is actually a sci-fi comedy called Sorry to Bother You, because there's something in that movie that I have actually seen firsthand in my life. So it's like that movie is not entirely science fiction to me. I have seen companies do something very similar to something that's in that movie. Not to spoil. I don't want to. That's one of those movies that you shouldn't go in knowing anything about. It should be very spoiler free going in. But yeah, that to me is actually the scariest movie I've seen because that's not sci-fi to me.
It's always funny how reality can always get close to them. I think that's why Twilight Zone was so fucking successful. I mean, they were talking about things that were really going on in life.
Yeah.
The
Truth is scarier than fiction.
Very political show.
Very.
Which actually, that kind of, I found that funny when it's like people were criticizing the new CBS All Access version of Twilight Zone for being too political. And I'm like, so you've never seen the original Twilight Zone, have you?
Well, I mean, don't forget, it was political for that time.
For that time.
Times are different, so
But
people
still,
may have seen
it's-
it, but they wouldn't know what the politics were back then for the most part.
But
so.
still, it's saying I do feel like if you are going to do a version of the Twilight Zone, it should have some sort of, not every episode, because not every episode of the original was political, but it still embraced that aspect of true life to it. So it's...
That's where I learned a lot of my morality from the original Twilight Zone series.
Yeah.
Basically karma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which there are issues with the new Twilight Zone beyond anything political. First season was like, episodes felt like they were written by 3 different people who each had 3 different points they wanted to make. And none of it was like, how did we get from A to B to C here? But we're getting off topic here.
Yeah, it's funny when you talk about morality. I got most of my morality from, let's see, Predator, God of War, Star Wars, mainly Predator.
Star Wars is a good one. That's a good one to get some morality. That's very black and white.
Dark side.
Yeah, dark side, light side.
Yeah, but I base most of my honor code off the Yautja code.
I don't know what that is.
It's a very, very nerdy thing that I do not want to get into right this moment. I think that the one thing too is that I find interesting is that why people who don't. It's different when you know how how the sausage is made. We're all in film. We're all in filmmakers. So it's very difficult to do that. So I'm very curious, what you guys think about people that are not involved in this and how they perceive horror movies or thought-provoking ideas that may be scary to them, and how they process it. Because some people fucking hate being scared. They hate that feeling. But I always find it interesting, why some people do and why some people don't. And what's that deciding factor? Because most people, so I go to Halloween Horror Nights as much as I can. My cousin Kevin fucking loves Halloween Horror Nights. My cousin Corey cannot fucking stand it. They're both brothers, and he cannot fucking stand it. He goes, why would I pay to go be scared? Why would I invest my money to go do that?
It's funny. I don't consider going paid to being scared. I consider paying to go to a fun land. In my personal opinion, like when we went to fucking what the hell was it called?
13th floor.
No,
13th floor.
State Asylum.
Yeah, Statesville.
Statesville.
Like. The nurses were just like, come stay with us. I'm like, okay. Mark's just like, bitch, get back here. I wanted to stay and party with these people. And Mark's over here just like, no, we gotta go. Don't you stay.
It's kind of like how I was saying earlier. It's a ride.
Yes.
And it's fun. I'm not scared. I'm having fun. I'm walking through this entire place with the biggest fucking smile on my face. In the back of my head, I'm like, I'm an asshole. These people, I'm supposed to be scared by these people. But I'm over here just like,
I think it's both, man, because if you watch people in haunted houses and everything else, first they're scared and then they laugh hysterically. I think people like to be in danger but know that there's no consequences of danger. That's why people do roller coasters. That's why people do haunted houses. Why people watch horror movies is to get them on the edge of the precipice but never actually be in any real danger.
hey guys,
Yeah.
I'm in danger.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and there's something else I like too. It's like with horror movies, just with any movies in general, because it is hard. Like I said, we are filmmakers, so it's like we know how all this stuff is made. And I did kind of go through my asshole phase where just like no movie could impress me because they could have done this better, and then I just kind of had
Still
that.
like that.
No, it's like, and then I'm just like. Yeah, I just need to embrace what filmmaking is. is. And so it's like I do like to give myself over to the stories that these movies make. So it's like, does a horror movie actually scare me? No. But will I give myself over to the story and for the ride of it and like allow myself to feel creeped out or whatever the movie wants me to feel? Yeah. I was going somewhere with this.
I'll ride the coattails of that. So yeah, it's like I used to kind of be a little bit more hardcore on like visual effects and graphics and stuff like that. But, as I've gone further, it's like I watch more Hollywood movies and I'm just like, this is fucking boring. It's stupid. I don't give a shit. And now I've watched more independent horror movies recently, especially after starting this channel. And hell, over the past year, and I'm like, this is fun. Why the fuck aren't we funding these things? These are guys who are just making fun stories, fun rides, and hell, even if it's bad, if I'm laughing my ass off at how bad the movie is, then fuck it, I'm laughing. I'm having a good time. I wasn't getting that with the piece of shit A24 film that these assholes made me watch. No, fuck them. I'd much rather watch this piece of shit and have a good time, because at least I'm laughing and there's a fucking story. Anyways,
he's not bitter.
With that rant, with that rant, I was going to throw in that I think this is where it kind of comes up to is what we see or don't see scarier? That's a big question I have because
it's very Hitchcock-y.
Well, there's even like a lot of people find like the gore, like some people. Well, I like gore movies. Don't get me wrong, and I like them this and that. But do they really actually scare me? I would say no, they really don't. A good example, something you already mentioned it, but for whatever the reason, rather than a madman with a mask hacking kids up, I'm much more terrified by the scene in The Conjuring where the mom is walking around blind, thinking she is playing a game with her child, and we see in the cupboard open up, or the closet, the dresser or whatever it is open up, and we see these dead, white, solid human hands. Are they human? They're human, but they're not human. And they clap. There is this otherworldly presence that is clearly there. I find that something like that, a spirit like that, being that close to life, that much more terrifying.
Yeah. When it comes to that discussion, I'm always on the side of I want to see it. I came to the movie to visualize something. I want to see every little fucking thing you can possibly show me. This hide and don't show thing always annoyed the crap out of me. I'm a visual person. I love the gore. Does it scare me? No. But it entertains me. So I want to watch, I want to see, and I want to know. This hide shit, don't tell, and just play the fucking mystery machine crap annoys the crap out of me. A24.
Well, on that note, and also I do remember where I was going earlier before, but I'll pick that up in a second.
Okay.
I think showing and also not showing are both very important tools. It's all about the psychology you want to make with your movie. For me, I do like to see stuff, but also I don't discount the power of a cutaway to a reaction during the showing. Because it's like, to me, it's like showing like the violence is the situation. And then during that, if you cut to a reaction, that creates the specific emotion you want the audience to feel during this as well. And then there are also those times where it's like I was listening to a Joe Dante podcast and he was saying, yeah, back in like the super practical, when everything was practical, sometimes when they cut away, it's not that they planned to cut away, it's that the effect was not working the way they thought it would the day of filming. And they were kind of stuck.
So something I will add on to that, there's also timing. Sometimes, yes, you want to hide stuff for tension, and it's like, okay, if you want to do that, fine, show it later. Do not go the whole movie without showing me nothing. Show me something at some point. Give me a reward. Reward me for my patience, okay? It
depends.
Yeah.
Blair Witch, to me, is one of the best examples of that. I watched that whole movie, and I saw the last, 20 seconds. I'm like, what the fuck? Did I miss it? And I wound it, watched it again, and no, there's no payoff for that whole movie.
I think it's one of those things that, and I'm going to go back to, I feel the same way about jump scares as I do about when it comes to showing versus not showing. Is it earned?
Earn it, yeah.
Is it earned? But I do agree with Zach to an extent, though, that you do have to show You know, you have to show something eventually. You have to make good on your promises of what you've
The
done.
biggest example of this is Jaws. It's gradual progression.
Right.
The beginning of the movie, you don't see the shark. When the shark attacks the kid, you kind of see its fin and the geyser of blood that comes up. And then, you know, once the guy in the fucking little rowboat gets murdered, you see the size of the shark and he just gets dragged down. It's awesome. And then at the end of the movie, you get a full-size picture of that great white going across
There's
the
a
boat.
progression.
There's
they
good
don't
progression.
show everything all at once, because if they showed that shark right up front in the movie, you saw the shark.
Yeah.
And also,
There's nothing to build to.
the shark didn't fucking work.
That's the main reason.
Which, it's what movie would we have gotten if the shark worked?
Yeah.
Jaws 3. That's the movie we would have got. Jaws 3.
Hey, Jaws 3 is a great movie, all right?
And then I do also...
Save the dolphins, the dolphins. I hated that movie.
There was also, in film school, there was a person in one of my classes, I think it was acting and directing, the one where you could only have like 2 actors in it or something like that. I think that was it. I don't know. Your curriculum was
what
a
the
little...
hell?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
my class.
Okay.
And what this one student did was that he did a short where it was basically a Saw ripoff. And it was a guy and a girl, and the girl had to cut the guy open and like take his entrails and guts out and everything. And it just kept going on and on and on. It was like nearly 3 minutes straight of this, and it was to the point, and it's like it's not cutting away, and it's like it's to the point where it's like this isn't creepy or gross or scary, and this is beyond. This is no longer the emotion you want me to feel. This is comedy now. So it's like, show stuff, but also have enough mind to know when to cut away to create the emotion you want.
Here's a fun example of that. So when I did my dream sequence project for editing, I have this scene where this demon cuts and tears the heart out of somebody. And I kind of held the shot for a good 3 or 4 seconds, but my editor told me, or my editing teacher told me, shorten it to maybe 2.5 seconds. And I did, and the shot was much more effective.
Yeah.
So I mean, timing is actually key. And you know what? You get the fucking visual, and it's timed perfectly. You know, everything works. Don't 824 your film and hold on the shot for 20 minutes to let your soundtrack play out.
There's
and a brand.
You know what though? And the funny thing,
there's the philosophy of Ernest Lubitsch. He was a director in the 30s and 40s.
Oh yeah, I remember him.
Get in and get out.
Hold up. Ernest Lubitsch.
Yes.
And his motto is get in and get out. Yes. Yes. Oh my God, yes.
Good night, folks.
The philosophy is get into the scene, make your point, don't linger on it, move on to the next scene.
I bet it is.
And so, oh my God, that's fucking fantastic. You know what?
Lubitsch.
I don't know if that was verbatim what he said, but that was basically he basically came up with these rules of filmmaking, and one of them was basically when you've made your point, move on.
No, it's good. It
is. It's good.
And also too, you can do both. A perfect example of that is Psycho. Is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. You could have sworn you saw that fucking knife go in, and it never. And then you go back and watch it again, and you're like, it never actually went in. But the psychology of how the shot was built and how it was edited made you believe, and the music made you believe that that you saw that knife go in, and then there's only one frame that actually shows a little bit of the knife going in, but it's all implied. And then that's the thing to with Jaws. The barrels, the barrels. You like that shark's over there. No, it's not. It's a bunch. It's 2 guys pulling fucking barrels underwater right now. But that's a way that you can show and not show at the same time, or give the illusion that you're showing, but you're not really showing anything. It's how you set it up and how it made it work and everything else. I mean, that movie, no shit, my Nana saw that movie when she was 13, 14. She did not shower for a month. She refused. She actually
Psycho or Jaws?
Psycho. She made her dad sit in the bathroom while she showered because she was afraid that Norman Bates was going to come and fucking murder her. And and that's how effective. And it's essentially, if you watch that shot without any music or any context and anything else, it just looks like a bunch of random flashes. And then you're like, I didn't see anything. And the funny thing is that's it really is. And same thing with Halloween. You didn't see shit. There's no gore in that movie. There's no none. But
there's a butcher knife that miraculously becomes longer after it impales the guy onto
Yeah,
the wall.
that's always either way. The gore in those movies is good. There's no Halloween movie with good gore. Actually, no. The recent one that came out actually had some pretty good gore, but the rest of them fucking suck. Jason for the win.
I don't know. I liked the bugs and snakes coming out of that kid when he wore the mask in Halloween 3.
That dumbass movie.
May that song haunt your nightmares forever.
Let's not.
How many more days until Halloween?
Shut up.
He's such an asshole sometimes. But you know what? I think that there's something to be said about the monster that you create in your own imagination.
Absolutely.
I think it's harder for us because we're going like, well, if I wanted to do that, I would just go and write it myself. And then go create something else from my own imagination. I don't need. I want to be entertained and see something. And be in my time to be valued and everything else, because we know the process. We know how it works. It's hard. It's hard when you are actually a person who films. Or actually is a filmmaker. It's harder to get away with some things sometimes.
It is, and you guys were talking about indie horror earlier. I really liked It Follows. And that's
Agreed.
simple. That's that's a person walking slowly behind you.
You're allowed to think that.
That's all it is. And that movie's still
Free
just...
country.
It's... Throughout it, there's a lot of tension. You're like, fuck, how do you get away from this ever?
There's that, but the reason I love that movie is I thought the idea was amazing. Demonic STDs. That's hilarious and awesome. Why has this never been done? I love it. It's
I'll
genius.
take Night of Something Strange. Thank you very much.
I don't give
My
a shit.
hot
I haven't
STDs.
seen that one yet. I'm just saying It Follows was hilarious and it was done well. I'm just like, okay, it's not as graphic as I'd like,
And
but
it
it's
was-
still fun.
And it was minimalistic. You didn't
Yeah.
have to show this or show that. They showed just enough to where it was successful. It worked.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes too is I think the one big thing with horror movies, I think sometimes you have more of an emotional investment when you give a fuck about the characters.
Oh, totally.
There's that too.
There's a bunch of different examples, and actually Zach's gonna get really pissed at me about this one, but I don't really give a shit. I watched The Burning the other day. I gave a shit way more about the fucking characters in The Burning than I did on Friday the 13th.
Oh, totally.
You don't care about Kevin Bacon?
Not really. Not on that one. There was far more of an emotional investment in those characters.
Look.
What? If I can interject too, there totally is. I thought so. That also on top of it, the makeup of that killer in that is far scarier.
Which that was also Tom Savini.
Is
if I'm not
far
mistaken.
scarier than most slashers I've ever seen. What's creepy is he doesn't just pick off 1, 2, 3. He actually they build up and they wait. Like I think I said to Mark, I said, we're a little more than halfway into this. Spoiler alert, we're a little more than halfway into this, and I think only one person's dead. There's a raft of like 6 of them trying to go back. He comes up out of a canoe that they find just floating. It's such a great buildup, and he kills all of them, mows them down all at once. So this isn't a killer that's just going and taking out 1, 2, 3. This is somebody that comes in and just mows down a whole group of them.
I love the timing too, because he had just said that. And he's like, I wonder who's gonna die, and then like 10 people die. It was great.
On a side note for Friday the 13th.
Well, first off, have you seen The Burning?
No, but
It's
I
actually
just
pretty good.
want
It's
to
Harvey
say
Weinstein's first movie.
we just okay, good for him. You watch the movies to watch campers get murdered. Not watching it because you give a shit about the characters, unless you want to talk about Tommy Jarvis, then you have an argument there. Or maybe even Part 7. Tina was awesome. But anyways, but besides the point, you're watching it because you want to see Jason murder the shit out of people. That's it. Don't try to make the timeline make sense. Your head will hurt, and it's just not worth it.
But you know what? The funny thing is, I got both with The Burning. I got emotional investment in the characters, and I got to watch a bunch of teenagers get murdered.
You know what? You didn't get Jason in a hockey mask, so screw you.
But neither did you in the first movie.
That's kind of why Jason in the hockey mask has never been one of my favorites. There's just not that much investment. It's people getting killed and okay.
You don't like seeing people die, Marcus?
What was the movie? Terminal.
Final Destination.
Thank you. Final Destination. Loved the first one. Very clever, very creative idea. After that, it was just watching people die.
You didn't
I
like
like
the
the
second
first
one? You didn't
one.
like the second or third one?
They're all right.
I love the
That one was
first
fun.
3. I think, for the most part, the characters in the first 3 movies, like, they did phenomenally. After that, it's just like, kind of like Saw. You're like, all right, this is kind of getting ridiculous. Time to just watch people get murdered in ridiculous ways by an invisible death.
Yeah, like why am I here again? The
Especially that fourth one. Like I'm like, they used Mr. Mercury to make the blood in this. Holy shit! I could do that.
Dude, like the first one though had something like it had a tangible like. I'm like, there's something really interesting about this idea, and even if like I know the concept, I know it. Like we all know it. It's been ingrained in our in our whole existence. We make jokes about driving behind a giant truck with a bunch of metal shit. Everybody it's in the cultural, but when you watch the first movie, there's just something about it, and I think like a lot of that too comes from it being a previously pitched X-Files episode. So I think some of that kind of feel comes in.
It does also play into a fear that a lot of people have about flying.
Yeah.
Which there was a period in my life where I kept forgetting that the first one was the airplane, and for some reason, like whenever I'd be browsing Netflix, like the night before I'm flying somewhere, I see Final Destination, and I was like, oh, Final Destination.
I'll never forget this. I just brought up the story.
Which I also said, when you actually really look at that scene in the first Final Destination, when they're on the plane, when you really look at the set, I feel like we could actually probably rebuild that airplane set. But because it's so well edited and the sound and the music, you buy it.
And one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie is when he gets everybody off the plane and his two buddies are literally fighting. And there's that great shot where you see them like literally almost in a fist fight. They're going back and forth, and then all of a sudden in the background, you're literally seeing the plane go up, and then it explodes, and then everyone gets knocked back. It was like I was like, that's insanely effective.
Because it's like the plane is totally not the focus of that shot.
No, it's not. It's them.
Yeah.
I was actually just gonna say a funny story. Years ago, there was a previous person I was dating. I had recommended Fight Club to her to watch. And she was traveling somewhere in a plane, and she's like, it's like, yeah, I caught Fight Club when I was on a plane. I was like, you do know that the first 5 minutes of that movie is a horrific plane crash.
Life insurance pays out triple if you die on a business trip.
Yeah. And I'm like, and she's like, yeah, you didn't tell me that, ass.
It clearly was not meant to be.
It was not. And some fun thing is I totally forgot about that first 5 minutes. I was just recommending it because it's Fight Club. Yeah. And I'm like, it's a great movie. Like, see it, but I totally forgot about that first 5 minutes of the plane blowing up.
So another one of my favorite moments from Final Destination is, and because this goes back to jump scares, is when the girl says, "Well, he just drop fucking dead and turn around."
Bam! Right with the bus.
Yes, that was a great jump scare.
Yeah, that was perfect and earned
Very, very earned. Coming a mile away, I'm just like
3, 2, 1.
Bam! That's one of those ones where it's like you like it because you see it coming.
I think too, there's a lot of great horror movies out there that there are movies. I think there's two kinds of horror movies for me. There's the ones that Zach loved, and I do love them as well, that you just watch people go to get killed in creative and fun ways. They're fun, they can be campy. And there are some ones, too, that have an emotional investment in them that I even more appreciate. Perfect example, and I bring it up a lot, and these guys are going to roll their eyes, but it is still one of my favorite horror movies, is The Final Girls. There's an emotional. Have you ever seen that?
The Final Girls.
The Final Girls. It's great. It's basically.
Why would we make fun of you for that?
I don't know. Because I bring it up
basic, and he chooses movies he just saw within the past week.
Actually I did watch it a week ago because I love it. It's you always explain the plot better of that movie. So
you ever seen Last Action Hero? Yeah. It's the Last Action Hero of horror movies.
That's how I describe it. Okay. That's how I described it to these two guys, which they forgot about that.
It's funny. He described this movie to us several times before us finally watching, and then it's just like he puts it on one night. He's just like, all right, cool. This is the Last Action Hero of horror movies, guys. Yeah, okay, cool. We're watching it, and then the thing happens, and then me and Mark just share, but wait. Holy shit! This is the Last Action Hero of horror movies, and we just see him get so mad.
And Brandon's like
you don't listen to me.
No, it was even.
You don't pay any attention to me,
guys. Do you hear something?
Yeah, exactly. He's like, these are the best friends I could do. This is the best I could do. I hope the camera's on his face right now.
I just wish we were recording our viewing session of that because that was such a fun fucking time.
Dude, the only reason we haven't done a screen room is because of the fucking music copyright shit that is in that movie. Like, there's a lot of fucking music in that movie, and the great part about that movie is an emotional invest. By the way, like what I'm about to explain is in the trailer. You can watch it in the trailer. Essentially, there's a girl whose mom was in like a Friday the 13th movie way back in the day, and she passes away. And like a year later, it's the anniversary of that movie, and she goes there to go watch the movie. I think her best friend's brother convinces her to go and see them, and then the theater lights on fire. And they end up going inside. They end up going through the screen, and then they end up inside the movie. And then she gets to see her mom, who passed away.
It's not her mom; it's the character her mom played.
And it's in the emotional impact of that movie carried. Even the most unemotional person that I know in the review actually said, "Yeah, that actually worked for me on an emotional level."
It was a beautiful fucking movie.
It was an absolute blast. Everything.
Some of the best character development I've ever seen in a horror movie in my life.
I do remember.
If you don't like it, you're a horrible person.
I do remember what I was going to say earlier about like letting myself go along for the ride of horror movies, because I kind of came to this realization recently. It's like, people always kind of go, that movie doesn't scare me. No movies scare me.
Yes.
They remind me of a character in a show that these guys showed me. Remember Ryder Strong in that one episode of Home Improvement when Tim Allen turns his basement into a haunted house, and Ryder Strong's just like, this isn't scary, and it's just like, you're just being an asshole. Everybody else is there to have fun, and yeah.
And that's, I think that's part of the thing too, and this comes back to, if you know how the sausage is made, it's harder to let yourself get into it. And I related to when I was going through haunted houses. I was always on my toes, and then and there was only like 2 times that I got, and they were great. It was super fucking impressive that they got me. But then finally, it was like right near the close of this, and I ended up keeping this tradition. It was a Cabin in the Woods haunted house. And I was like, I love Cabin in the Woods. I'm going to go through this. But I'm going to go through this. I'm going to be invested in it. I'm not going to go in, like checking my corners and everything else. I'm just going to go and have fun. And the funny thing is, ironic, is I had way more fun when I was just hanging out and just going through. And I think that sometimes that comes into play about your enjoyment and being scared. Very much piggybacking off of what Brandon said is, that comes into play a lot. When we watch, and sometimes when we watch horror movies, being horror fans, we're like, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But, sometimes you have to take a breath and just allow yourself to go into it. And actually, that helped out with going to Halloween Horror Nights anymore. It wasn't just about the set design and the costumes and all that, which is all great. It's all a huge part of the experience. But it was more about, how Zach feels about it, is the enjoyment of being there and the enjoyment of it. And I think sometimes that's missed with horror movies, and when you watch too many of them, it gets to a point where you're like, oh, well, here's the checklist, here's what's going to happen, and then, da-da-da-da. But if, you take a second.
Take in the fucking scenery.
Correct.
Like, just sit, like, if you actually have the opportunity to just kind of stand there and just look around and just enjoy yourself, it's great. Like, when you don't have long-ass lines behind you and everybody's just kind of rushing through, like, I just like just being there and just being like, I fucking love this. I would love to live here.
It's just fucking great. You know what? And that's how I actually watched The Conjuring for the first time. Was the people I watched it with happened to be in an apartment with very, very few windows, and they turned the lights off and it was completely pitch black except the one screen in the movie. And people were talking behind, but I couldn't see anybody because it was that dark in there. And I'm like, this is how you watch a fucking horror movie. Not on your phone, not not dicking around, but but really in the right environment to watch it. Sometimes that takes a little bit of setup, but I think you're going to be in a much better place, and I think you get much more enjoyment out of it, and maybe much more tension, fear, whatever the case may be, is out of it, and then be able to enjoy it on a different level, rather than being the asshole, and saying, well, I could have done that better. Look at that. What's going on there? That's ridiculous.
I just really enjoy saying that for fucking Hollywood films, because it's like, if they're shitting it, it's like, really, bitch?
With that budget? Yeah.
Exactly. Fuck you.
Yeah, it becomes kind of a silly thing. So
okay, it's almost like you're saying you're not necessarily scared by the movie, but you're scared for the character. Because you're invested in the character, you're concerned like, oh no, they're gonna die, or how are they gonna die?
Yeah, I think if you put yourself in the shoes and you really get invested in it, that's a much better way of your time. Because when we get into like the trying to psychoanalyze ourselves, sometimes, it gets to the point where Zach's like, I don't really give a shit about, I'm not really scared about anything, but I think if you put yourself in those shoes, I think you'll find a much more, a better way to enjoy it, and a better way to react to it. At least that's my perspective. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
One thing I'm very much looking forward to is when horror really takes over virtual reality.
Ooh, there's a thought.
Yeah, like virtual reality, I've been experimenting it with it more recently since I got a good VR headset, and I started playing Doom 3 on it, and it's the horror version of Doom essentially, and it's fucking fun. But it's still an action game, but it's like there's this game Blade and Sorcery that's out. It's a very violent game. Essentially, it's supposed to be like a medieval simulator and stuff like that, but it's essentially a simulator for psychopaths like me. Like, I will literally just stand there, put it on a 1v1, grab a knife, and just start playing with somebody's guts and just stabbing the shit out of them, doing the most violent, grotesque shit I could possibly do. I sent him a video. I'm just like, so you think this is violent? And it's just 20 minutes of this one guy just beating the shit out of people. And, like, you can grab somebody by the skull and just bash their head into a concrete. It is so beautiful and satisfying.
I'm waiting for Rockstar to release.
To me, it's not worth getting a VR headset until they make a game based on the Lawnmower Man.
Oh, Jesus Christ. But anyways, that's a level of immersion I've been waiting for my whole life. So to get a horror experience like that will be amazing. Like, I hope for some reason they do Alien Isolation in VR.
I was literally just thinking that.
Because if they do that, that would be, like, Alien Isolation for me is the best horror video game out there right now. And if they were to bring that into VR, holy shit, that'd be amazing. Or another good one, the first fucking Dead Space.
Ooh, yeah.
That would be another phenomenal VR game.
That was. You know what? You know what's something funny too is I actually went back and played the original Halo, and I threw on noise canceling headphones, and that whole flood level took on a whole new meaning for me.
It's beautiful.
The sound design on that is fucking amazing. You know what though? I think that'd be an interesting thing to add to the experience. Just that. Watching a horror movie with noise canceling headphones.
I mean, it's still meh. Like it's like for me, it's still a movie. Like video games are different because you're in them, you're playing them, and it's like adding the whole virtual reality element to it just makes it that much better.
And you know what I think we found? I think we found where Zach's next step is. His line is, which is immersing yourself into something that's totally immersive. You know, you're blocking out everything. It's very Ready Player One that way.
And I cannot wait to get to that level.
Where you can make anything. It'd be a lot of fun. What about you, Brendan?
About what?
What are your thoughts on the full immersive experience?
Virtual reality, stuff like that.
Like, I've never even tried virtual reality before. And I've never really been much of a gamer in my adult life.
What about movies? What do you think movies will get to that point? And
you do have VR videos. I mean,
Sure.
I remember early on when they were starting to come out with the Google Cardboards and stuff for like phones.
Yeah.
They had that advertisement for the Nun. Like you just like YouTube ad would start and just be like put this thing in VR and you could actually look around and you could see her following you. I'm like, all right, that's a cool idea. It's they gotta work on it a little more. But I could see movies start taking on virtual reality at some point too. It'd be a pain in the ass to shoot, but it is a possibility. I don't know how you do it, but.
You think it would take something away from it, Brendan?
In terms of an actual movie, like to me, that feels more like those rides you go to that are like those like 15-minute movies on like IMAX screens at amusement parks.
Like the
yeah, like that feels more like that than an actual movie to me.
yeah.
What was that first-person action movie, Henry?
Hardcore Henry?
Hardcore Henry. Like a horror movie like shot like that? All
Maniac
first person?
with Elijah Wood.
Well,
I still need to watch that, but I heard
was actually a
very
good
good
movie.
things about that.
So that might be the next level of this.
I've been waiting for that for years
I
now.
feel like you would lose any kind of character development there. You wouldn't have the same. You wouldn't care as much because, I mean, I get it. You're the character now, but
It will probably rely more on supporting characters at that point, and them supporting you rather than the other way around. So I don't know. I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing. I wonder about how that's gonna affect the general public and the people who go to horror movies to do that. I mean, it's just funny. Like I've been in a crowd in seeing people react. I mean, hell, like I just got an excellent compliment from Living Nightmares episode 2. There was one of my coworkers, and he was watching it with his girlfriend, and she was freaked the fuck out when that knock came on. And she's like, no, hell no. Very animated. Like and he was texting me about it and telling me all about it, and I'm like, it's awesome. I love that, and that was so awesome to me. But and the funny thing is, I love to hear that. It's funny to talk to people that aren't desensitized yet.
It is. Like I've realized a bunch of my friends' girlfriends terrified of zombies. If a zombie apocalypse were to happen tomorrow, their immediate words, I'm just killing myself.
Then you're gonna become a zombie.
It's just like, you're not going to try to have fun? Like, seriously?
Depends. Sometimes there's something in the air. Sometimes it's a
okay, if
bite.
you're going off the Walking Dead logic, sure. But I'm just like, wow, this is weird. It's just like, nobody in our group. It's just like, yeah. But I'm like, really? Zombies? That's what makes you kill your... What? Of all the fucking things, like Terminators maybe. I mean, they're a little bit harder to fight, which, please, why did we have to have fucking COVID? I just wanted Terminators. Anyways...
Well, and Sarah's big thing is aliens. She just cannot deal with that.
Really?
She prefers the supernatural, elements, and she can deal with, the psychotic killer. It's just something about aliens. Alien in particular, the Alien and Aliens movies. She has an issue with the slime and the sheen
That
and
makes
everything.
sense, actually.
It's very
So I was watching some video. I forget what it was. I can't remember what it is right now. But basically, the guy was talking about how, in terms of actually scaring your audience, slime will get more of an actual fear reaction than blood, because the slime is so ingrained in back millions of years ago. It's like the kind of things that would hunt us and everything. Like slime is a very organic and what's the word I'm looking for here? It's more a nature thing rather than with blood. It's like that creates a different reaction with us. With blood, it's like, okay, it's like if we see another person bleeding, we want to help that person. Whereas with the slime, there's something that's actually after us.
That is, the Blob's a perfect example of it.
Or the
shit.
Thing.
The Thing.
The Fly.
All the above, anything with body horror. There was a story that you told me, but I wanted you to talk about it in more detail, was how your perspective of Alien changed when you saw it in over at Magic Box.
Magic Box?
Music Box. I see this all the fucking time. It drives me nuts.
God damn it, we talk about that movie. Oh, fucking hell, Mark.
Yeah.
Anyways, I...
Who asked you?
Anyways, I had seen Alien, God only knows how many times on, my TV and stuff like that, phone, you name it. I watch the movies all the fucking time.
The only reason you haven't seen it more times than me is because I'm older.
That's still debatable. I watch those movies a lot. Anyways, I went to go see it in Music Box with Wes because what's his name was going to be there, and
Tom Skerritt.
Yeah, Tom Skerritt was going to be there, and then also they were doing a film print of it, and I was just like, I missed it when they did the double feature of Alien and Aliens. I'm not missing this one. So, yeah, you missed it too. Me and so many people missed it because nobody fucking knew. We were all pissed. But anyways, I was sitting there watching it in the theater, and it's just the sound immersion. I'm just like, I see why this is a horror movie now. When you're watching it in theater, the sound design and everything is just so beautifully done and perfect. It's just like, okay, now I see it. Still doesn't scare me, but I fucking love this movie. And this was the best viewing experience I had of this movie ever.
That's a fantastic movie, and the tension and that is totally earned in every possible way. And not to mention, I haven't really. It was like Die Hard and Alien were the first times that I ever learned about claustrophobia and feeling claustrophobic. For obvious reason, Die Hard, he goes through the vents, and then she's in the fucking vents the entire time. So the feeling
claustrophobia. Watch The Descent.
I was gonna say that movie will make you feel fucking weird.
I know a lot of people that one affected.
The great movie that earns every bit of its
absolutely.
Of its
That I remember watching the movie because that movie actually scared the shit out of my friend when we were kids, and I just never got the chance to watch it. I finally watched it 7 or 8 years ago, and I was like, wow, this is really fucking good. I'm sad I missed this when it came out because this is beautifully done.
I was gonna ask I wonder what scared. And Zach, there's nothing, but what scared the shit out of you when you were a kid? Before you really understood, how this all works and everything else. I was curious about that. I was thinking about that.
So I was not censored at all. So I watched Carrie in the movie theater, watched Jaws. I mean, again, I jumped. I remember Phantasm. Phantasm scared me for some reason.
I like Phantasm.
And then the Exorcist. That was pretty scary.
Oh, you were scared of that one?
Yeah, I mean, I was
Did I
5, 6.
Did I ever tell you my family story on The Exorcist? So I obviously they make jokes. I'm fucking Italian, so my family grew up in a very Italian neighborhood, and all the ladies in the neighborhood, the moms, they used to have a card club, but they also used to have like a prayer meeting, meeting, and then there actually used to be a statue of the Virgin Mary that would stay in somebody's house for a week, and then they would literally it's Catholic thing. They they got weird shit going on. So they would literally go from house to house to house, and somebody would host it, and then the ladies would come over and have a prayer meeting, and then have cake and coffee. My uncle Tommy, he was living with his mom at the time. I think I told these guys this story.
Yeah.
He went to go see The Exorcist, and it was his mom's turn to have the Virgin Mary in there. So the kitchen's in the over here, and the living room's over here. Virgin Mary's right here, and there's a back door, and he came in through the back door, and she's at the kitchen table having coffee and cigarette. All the ladies had already left, and he walks in with that 10,000-mile stare, just this. and then she's like, "Hey Tommy, how was the movie?" He goes. And then looks into the living room, sees the Virgin Mary. How long is she going to be here for? And Mom's like, I don't know, the rest of the week. And he's like, it's like, good, I'm sleeping under her the rest of the week.
It's funny because when William Friedkin made the movie, he considered it a drama, not a horror movie. And in fact, on the Blu-ray special features, that I'm very much paraphrasing here, where there's a point where it's just, I saw it as a drama. But if people want to call it a great movie and they want to pay to see it, they can call it a horror movie all they want.
Yeah, go ahead.
I also have a funny story for The Exorcist. I don't remember the details entirely,
But I remember my grandmother went to go see it, and I think she brought my mom with her to go see it. So they got back home, and they looked upstairs, because we used to live on Ashland or whatever, and they noticed all the lights in the apartment were out. They called my aunt, had her come over, go upstairs, turn every light in the house on, and it's just like, you're fucking staying the night with us.
See, so those are the best thing. Like, those stories are the fucking best. Like, all those stories about your families going to see horror movies and then having to deal with it. Dude,
well, my grandparents on my father's side went to see Deliverance because they thought it was a religious movie.
It might be, just depends on the religion that you're talking about.
I know they walked out. I don't know at what point.
Just add one more funny thing about The Exorcist. My mom didn't show me that movie for years. Hell, I didn't even know it existed until many moons later. And she finally fucking bought the movie, and we were watching it. It was me, my buddy Justin, and my grandfather. My grandfather falls asleep through it. My buddy Justin, he gives up when she does the crab walk down the stairs because he'd seen it and he was terrified of it.
The new version.
Yeah. And then I'm sitting there. They get to the point where she's stabbing herself in the vagina with the cross. I'm laughing my ass off, and everyone just comes out and looks at me like, are you fucking insane? I'm like, no, this is hilarious.
It's fucking
You mean
wild.
to tell me you motherfuckers were scared of this?
Did you laugh, Hannah?
I did.
It's like she's stabbing herself in the vagina saying, fuck me with a cross. How is that not hilarious?
Oh, man.
My parents saw that movie in the theater, and they took me. They were actually still together. They took me, and I was,
Was it when their relationship ended? when someone
Really
wanted
not
to
shortly
decide to take
after.
you to The Exorcist?
I think I was maybe 2, because I was still in the crib.
my
And
God.
anyway, they come home, and that night, I guess I started imitating, like making some of the noises from the movie.
Oh, that's fucking funny. My dad told me a funny story too about the first time. That's fucking great. Hold on, I'm gonna take a moment for that one.
Wait. Did you stab yourself in the balls and say fuck me?
Your mother sucks cocks in hell. Wait, what? This is why nobody watches the podcast.
A couple of assholes.
I got one thing to add.
Oh, please.
Oh, please.
This is going to go away from The Exorcist, actually. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Well, I think it's an important thing to talk about as far as being scared about is we got to consider is the sound, music versus not music in a movie. For instance, I think there's like certain movie themes that scare the shit out of people. When you hear dun-dun, dun-dun,
One of the most
dun-dun, you know that thing's coming. When there's other movies I can think of as an example. One that terrifies the hell out of me. I've only seen it twice because it freaked me out so much, and it's not technically a horror movie by any means. Is the last scene? Towards the end in Joker, where he's on the set with Robert De Niro, and he's gonna pull that gun, and there is a simmer and a drum beat that keeps building up. It's almost like a heartbeat. I don't know if it's supposed to be like his rage or what it is, but it's just building and building, and to me that's terrifying in a way.
Well, the funny thing is,
I thought that was. Go ahead.
Yeah. I know it takes a second to switch over. And I know that's actually a famous story about Halloween in particular. There was John Carpenter hadn't done the score yet, and he was showing it to a bunch of Hollywood producers and everything else. And there was no sound. And one of the producers, she said, "Oh, movies like this don't really scare me." And then about a month later, he had added in the score. And she talked to him afterwards. She said, "This is the most terrifying movie I've ever seen." And just how completely changed the perspective on them. Yeah, that always comes into play. The sound and what's going on, and that's why we got the great compliment for episode number 2, because that has the best sound design. It's fucking creepy. It works. It works completely. And also too, one of my favorites of all time is still Nightmare on Elm Street. It's a phenomenal score, and it gets you right in the fucking in the gist of everything.
Dude, that fucking nursery run they do, 1, 2, Freddy's Coming for You is brilliant.
Christ, you
hear that, and if you were to ever hear that outside, you're just like, fuck.
Somebody
call Rooney Mara. She has no emotion. Have her scare Freddy off. Seriously, that remake annoyed the crap out of me.
We're talk about remakes today.
Sorry. Scores always. One quick story, because I didn't want to forget it and everything else. It was about families watching horror movies. My dad got to actually didn't watch Scream in the theaters. He watched it on VHS. And the one scene that freaked him out for just a second was when Jamie Kennedy is watching Halloween, and then the truck, they're watching Jamie watch Halloween, and the killer's behind him. And my dad's like, if they're watching him, and then he's watching that, who's behind me? And I'm like, oh, that's so simple, but so fucking funny and effective. Those are always the best. But yeah, scores and sound design, play such an aspect. And as the joke goes, you don't want to be scared by a horror movie. Turn the sound off. You won't be that scared. Watch a horror movie on mute. It's not going to be anywhere near as effective. I don't know, like what are some scores for you guys that really take the cake?
You've mentioned them. I mean, Jaws.
That's
Halloween. I can hear it now.
Yeah.
Psycho. I can hear it now.
Jesus.
Psycho's a great one.
Yeah.
I've always liked the
Honestly,
Phantasm
I love
score.
that song she sings in the ring. There's this really creepy like. La, 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 la,
I don't remember that.
I don't remember that either.
I think I do
Freaks
remember
me
what
out.
you're
I
talking
seriously
Wow,
thought
I
it was
really
like
don't remember that.
Yeah, I must have missed that one. There's a bunch of great simplistic scores that just fucking work. There was one from the documentary In Search of Darkness, and I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was so simplistic and it just fucking worked. It worked in every way. It helps. It helps build to the tension. It helps build to the fear, and then also too, certain notes and music hit people differently. I think somebody brought
Brown note.
Yeah, word. The truth is out there, bro. Jaws is interesting because somebody brought it up recently. Like, that note is terrifying. But the thing is, though, about Jaws, the score as a whole, it's propulsion. If you really listen to it, it's the beats get more progressive and faster and louder, and you can't stop it. You can't stop these notes. They're coming for you. They're going to get you. And that's what makes it so effective is a constant propulsion. Ironically, it's fucking shark. That's what sharks do. They're in constant propulsion. You know, eating, death. It's primal. It's very, very primal. And it works. And it works. And then you get, situations like the birds when there's no fucking sound, and that's really creepy. The ending in the birds is fucking terrifying, or at least it was for me when I saw it. I know Vinny's a big Hitchcock fan, so there's plenty of examples there of lack of sound or having sound.
Well, I would say also, besides Hitchcock, some of the earliest movies that didn't use, because I was going to say you got the music, but the lack of music. I think a couple movies that really are still have effective scenes with the lack of music is actually the original Dracula, Frankenstein, and The Mummy from Universal. The Mummy has this great sequence at the beginning where Karloff as the mummy has just come to life, and it's quiet. I mean, you hear the sound in the tomb, you hear the guy ruffling around looking at the scroll, but you just see Karloff's eyes open and you hear his arm move, and then the next thing you see is the guy working, and all of a sudden you just see Karloff's hand come over in a shadow, and then you see the mummy's hand come over and get close to him and start grabbing the scroll and pulling it away. I think it's just so effective not having any music there at all.
Zach, you've been watching horror movies forever. I mean, scores were probably really important, or maybe you didn't even realize how important. I mean, did they,
definitely as time has gone on, like, I've grown a much bigger appreciation for scores and stuff. Like, I was just thinking the other day, I'm like, movies don't have good scores anymore. Like, they really lack it. Like, when it comes to iconic scores of, like, the past, 10 years or something, I can't think of any. Brandon brought up a good point. Like, one that was, actually had a score was Preacher. What's his name had one? Yep. What the fuck's the guy's name?
The Sound of Killers?
Yeah, Sound of Killers. He had his own score and stuff. I hated it. I thought it sounded terrible, but it's something I know where it's from.
One of the things that made me think Preacher has some of the best music in film and TV today is, especially with the villains, they have their own motifs. And it's like when you hear that certain music coming on, you know that character's coming.
Another example of a good, The Mummy from 1999. If I were to hear Imhotep's theme, I would know it. If I were to hear Evie theme, I would know it. If I were to hear Brandon Fraser's theme, I would fucking know it.
I feel like we've kind of gotten away from motifs and reactionary scores.
In the name of freaking licensed tracks.
Or it's like... So yeah, I do feel like scores have really gotten away from reactionary scores, motifs. I can't even think of the last real theme we've gotten in a long time. Yeah. What's the I can't really think of any scores I've really gotten into. Everybody talks about the Jaws score, like we've said, but
I mean, it's amazing and it's a classic one. But I mean, the only one I can think of it personally, I think it fucking sucks, but it's there, is the Avengers one. In all the movies, that's the only one that really has a fucking theme to it. Is the Avengers theme. The rest of the characters, it's
trying to remember it.
Oh no, wait, fucking Wonder Woman, that stupid ass guitar solo.
Well, there was also she had that, but yeah, it's I can't even think of horror movies.
That's in all the DC ones.
Yeah, a few of the DC ones, and then I don't know if people will agree with me on this one, but maybe Inception.
Inception might be the last score that's really gotten into the zeitgeist of popular culture.
And there's a huge difference between being an enjoyable score and then going, holy shit, I remember this. You can hear it, in those few notes. Those are special. The one I can think of from my own childhood that's more of the recent ones and everything else that's memorable is Goosebumps. I remember Goosebumps all the time. Dun, 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 dun. That's really easy to remember. And it's part of that, and it's in the zeitgeist. And I guess Inception is to a degree, but
Jurassic Park is in there as well.
True.
I mean, if we want to go from my childhood, the Spider-Man theme, the Sam Raimi ones, I fucking love that one.
That was a good theme.
Yeah.
Dude,
another good one was the Incredible Hulk. What's it called? The one with not Edward Norton, the one before that.
Eric Bana.
Yeah. That one actually has a good score to it, too. Danny Elfman. That movie, you may not like the movie. Soundtrack was great.
Yeah, Danny Elfman, that makes a lot of memorable scores. And
Pirates of the Caribbean. Jack Sparrow.
Fucking,
he has his motif, too.
Yeah. I mean, Darth Vader.
Of course, Darth Vader.
Fucking essential.
Look, look, no one's getting the prequels. Love them or hate them all you want. The fucking score to those movies
Well, yeah,
Then we
Duel
get,
of the
Howard
Fates.
Shore for Lord of the Rings. His score for those is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those are.
But again, these are movies pre-2010.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
and
the problem. Like all of this is pre-2010. Everything after 2010, it feels like, for the most part, it's just kind of, well, fuck it.
Well, you don't know.
Let's just put "Welcome to the Jungle" for the 15 billionth time.
You know that's the shitty part is because that has to do with just the industry as a whole and how like nothing original is coming out, and and people fucking wonder why people are so easily desensitized to films. It's because it's the same shit. No one's doing anything new, and people wonder why. Especially guys like us who know how the movies are made. It's getting to the point where the people who don't know how the movies are made are going like, yeah, whatever, it's whatever. But I mean, like, the movies that were made that were breaking new ground. Say what you want about Friday the 13th. Like, I get it. Like it's if you watch it, it's an enjoyable movie. It's a fun movie, but it broke ground. Like, it did something different than other movies had not done before. I mean, Killer in the Woods. It's Cabin in the Woods. It's, like, there's a lot of interesting things going on there. And those are themes that echo for decades after the fact. It broke ground.
Also, it was extremely violent for its time.
True. Yeah. Very, very true.
Like, you compare the violence to that movie versus the slashes from beforehand, and it's like, holy shit.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, you have Halloween that started it, and when Psycho maybe a little bit beforehand, started that whole, wave.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre had no blood in it. Toby Hooper was trying to make a PG movie there.
It's always interesting.
That makes sense.
But it broke ground. Like, Chucky broke ground. The things that are innocent are now not so innocent anymore. But then there's a whole string of movies. Even Friday the 13th, there was a whole fucking string of movies after the knockoff Friday
Nightmare on Elm Street.
You can't get much more. How can you escape your nightmares? Everyone dreams and everyone has nightmares. So there's nothing new going on.
That's why you got to go to the independent market. That's where all the fun shit's happening.
Yeah.
That's why I said earlier, I'm like, I find myself enjoying independent movies because they're original. They're doing new shit. They're doing cool shit. They're doing fun shit.
And you don't even have to go that low budget either. Like, even Blumhouse is doing some good stuff, like The Invisible Man. Like, look at what they did with a Universal monster next to what actual Universal tried to do with their monsters with The Mummy and Dracula Unwatched.
I mean, I wouldn't even use that as a Blumhouse example. I would use, like, Freaky and, what the hell is it called?
Freaky,
Happy Death Day.
Get Out, Us. Yeah, they've had some really good stuff.
You've been very unique.
Truth or Dare.
Really? You could do something good with that, but it's just terribly done.
I mean, what is it with you, Marcus? Do you believe that original ideas are a huge part of, keeping that fear in what scares us and what will continue to scare us and be new and inventive? I would love to hear what you have to say about that.
Definitely, it certainly helps. I mean, there's a reason there's so many remakes and reboots and sequels. They lack originality. And yeah, I agree with Zach that most of the interesting new stuff is independent now. Yeah. And yeah, if you want to scare people or at least catch people off their guard, you've got to go different and can't do the same old thing. Otherwise,
because
like you said, we've seen
the movies that were
this.
scary in 1980 is because those movies were about things that were going on in the 80s. And I do feel like we also have, and this is very much a problem with our genre, is that there's too much 80s worship, pretty much. It's like people are trying to be like 80s throwback, 80s this. But those movies worked in the 80s because they were in the 80s. They were a reaction to what was going on at the times in the 80s. And so I feel like there's not a lot of embracing of what are the fears of this time in horror. So it's like, I feel like if somebody really does want to push horror forward, I think they need to be true to what are the fears of society right now.
That's part of the reason
rather
I think
than trying to recreate the fears of the past.
Right. That's part of the reason I think Get Out's one of the best films I've seen in a long time, if not ever. I love that movie, and it's definitely a unique take on fears.
Yeah.
The especially with the funny thing is it has a lot of other undertones and everything else, of course, to it. But online dating, meeting somebody in that kind of world and everything else. That's a fear. That's a modern fear unto itself. And there's a lot of interesting things there. With knowing people, not knowing people, and I think that's why like Black Mirror's doing a lot of great stuff. You know, like they're making more of a statement about what's going on in today. You know, and everything else. So I'm curious to bring that up to you guys. You know, like to even more expand upon it. What do you think are some fears that are working today that nobody's really touched? You know, like, everybody's doing 80s throwback shit, and they're going, like, like 80s. And I find it hilarious. They haven't even reached the 90s yet. They're still stuck in the fucking 80s.
Yeah.
There's plenty of fear in the 90s. I think, what are some interesting fears that you think that haven't really been covered? And hell, I'm going to do that as the question of the podcast. I think that's a good question to ask. What are some modern fears that you think you would like to see in some of these movies covered?
Personally, I don't feel I can do that question justice just being hit with that question right now in a short amount of time.
Fair enough. Well, I guess I can let you go last and everything else. And
that's my answer.
Okay, fair enough.
I realize it's a bit of a cop out, but no, it's like that. I feel like that question almost deserves its own podcast.
Fair enough. What about you guys?
I'm going to throw out the movie Antebellum. I'm guessing you guys haven't seen it. I wouldn't say it's great, but it's interesting. It's interesting fear. It's an interesting take on.
What was it about?
It looks like it's about slavery.
Okay.
That's what it looks like it's about, and that's all I'm going to tell you. So you'll,
okay.
Okay.
But it turns, because I said, this isn't what I thought it was. I watched it with my wife, and she said, what did you think it was? I thought it was a horror film produced by Jordan Peele. And I don't think it was produced by Jordan Peele, but it did turn out to be a horror film.
Okay.
So it just takes its time to get there, and once it gets there, you're like, okay. Mm-hmm. I can see how that's incredibly frightening.
I'd be interested to hear what you have to say.
Technology.
I agree. Expand on that.
I mean, shit. There's almost there's eyes and ears everywhere you are nowadays. Like privacy is almost a thing of the fucking past. So it's like if somebody really wanted to right now, if they were to hack Mark's laptop, they could watch this whole conversation we're having right now.
There's a lot of interesting things to expand upon that and everything else. Actually, go ahead. Please.
I was going to say, we're getting closer to Terminators than I'd ever really like to be. Even though I keep saying I'd love to see a rise of T-800s, at the same time I'm like, that's a nuclear warfare I also don't want to deal with. It's just the preferred apocalypse I would choose to deal with.
I prefer to live comfortably than dealing with T-800s walking around.
And that's why people crack that joke about, Skynet. I mean, Google. There's a lot of interesting things there.
Too much power. I'm very against connecting everything. Like every time I see an Alexa in somebody's house, the first thing I think is, you fucking moron.
Everything's
listening in.
Yeah.
This has been around for a while, though. If you think of 1984 and Big Brother and all that, it's
happening.
Concept's been around, but yeah,
I see it happening right in front of us, and I just see people eating it up. I'm just like, oh, for the love of Christ!
I'm gonna try to do this super quickly because I know Mark wants to answer his question.
I'm actually gonna toss. I'm gonna toss it over. I'm gonna toss it over to our guest, but please.
But this just reminded me of something. But have you ever seen the Disney movie Tomorrowland with George Clooney? Okay movie, but really interesting philosophy behind it, where it's like basically. The point the villain was trying to make is we basically fetishize like the apocalyptic technology fantasy, and we're basically willing dystopia into our own lives rather than embracing what good things technology can bring. It's like we only want to focus on the bad, and that's sort of creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I thought that was a very interesting philosophy in Disney movie of all places.
It's a fair point. Yeah. I mean, I personally just wouldn't want to even give the damn thing a chance, but, I like to have contingencies for every possible event, so my contingency is don't connect artificial intelligence to nuclear weapons in all your home cellular devices.
I'm going to toss it over to our guest.
All right. I'm going to go out a little bit here. I don't know if this is controversial or not, but
can't wait.
I'm going to go out and say I think one of the biggest things nowadays that they should do something with is the media. And how does the media connect to the government?
It's a good one.
Who do you believe?
Yeah.
Who's telling the
Information
truth?
warfare.
Information warfare. Propaganda war.
Yeah.
Who do you believe anymore?
It's a good one.
And if you can get them to believe you, you can manipulate the government, do anything.
Exactly.
That almost happened. That came
Exactly.
scarily close to actually happening.
What can you do?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hannah, I'd be very interested to hear yours as well.
Honestly, I'm kind of with you on the dating thing. Just with all the online dating, and especially being a woman, it's kind of like, women have to look out for each other, but what if there's that case where you don't have someone looking out for you? Or maybe they've been lied to by the same person into thinking that it's not what it is. There could be a lot of really interesting kind of thrillers, psychological thrillers that could kind of come from that, I think.
Yeah, and I think it switched over to me. I know it takes a little bit to do the transition. So I think the one big thing for me is just because let's be perfectly honest. We live in a very tumultuous political time, where things are very divisive and it's either here or here. It's very black and white. I think the two biggest things that I think would be interesting to explore is one, having the entire mainstream society against everything that you are as a person. Are you? It's kind of like a Beautiful Mind or Shutter Island in a political sense. Are you the crazy one, or is everybody else the crazy one? And it's how does this work in this dynamic? And I think, and then the one thing too is it almost be from a body horror perspective of people trying to change who you are as a person to fit whatever mold. Or even removing, this is a discussion that Hannah and I have had on a couple occasions, which was removing aggression or alpha characteristics from you so you can become more beta or effeminate. Either that or removing those people from society and putting them in mental asylums because you're against the mainstream, so we're going to put you away from society because we deemed you that. It's very V for Vendetta in that way. We're very much putting you over here, and that's an interesting fear to do that, is how it's not only about control, it's about how certain emotions and certain characteristics are not good for society and what they're trying to build. So they're going to remove you from society or make you think you're insane for believing what you believe and being who you are in any way, in any capacity. And if you don't follow this beaten path, you're going to be put off. That as an artist, and I know it's kind of douchey to call yourself an artist, but that's essentially what we are as an artist, artistic people. That's fucking terrifying. Because that's what we do.
Definitely outside the norm.
That's true too. But but we're also, our passions, our job, what we're paid to do is to think outside the box and create things that are outside of the normal philosophy to challenge people. I often, and this goes to a deep thing with me. Somebody, a long time ago, somebody asked me why you act. And I think I said this in another interview, but I think this is important. And I said, well, it's two reasons. One is selfish and one is selfless. The one that's selfish is I get an adrenaline buzz off creating. It's fun. It's fun to fuck around. Zach knows this, better than anybody. Brandon knows this. I've gotten a chance to pitch stuff. Vinny definitely knows this, because him and I pitch shit off of each other all the time. Hannah and I enjoy talking about creative things. I enjoy talking about creative things with everyone around me and everybody that I love and care about. And that's a wonderful adrenaline buzz. But the other thing is I wanted to bring something to an audience. I want to make them laugh. I want to make them cry. I want to make them feel afraid. I want to make them, and more importantly, I want to make them think. I want to make them react. Maybe change their perspective on something. See something a different way from a different angle. Or maybe even more importantly, pull them away from their very hard lives and give them a chance to decompress and just enjoy watching a bunch of teenagers get killed because it's fun and silly and everything else. So we get to have a good time. That's our responsibility as artists and as filmmakers and actors and everything else and writers. We're allowing audiences to take a step away from their lives that they may be going through hell, but they step into this little universe that we've created for them, and they get a chance to take a breath and laugh and get scared and maybe cry, maybe think about something different and change their perspective. And that's a wonderful thing. Very few people can actually honestly say, and I told you this earlier, that they truly love what they do. And that's not only what I love and what's great, but it's also my responsibility to do that. And when you take those people out of your society, the society crumbles as a whole, because there's nothing for anybody to look forward to. There's nothing else. It's very dreary. It's very Mad Max at that point. That's what scares the shit out of me. And I probably should have answered this earlier, but that's what really scares the shit out of me, when we stop being challenged as people, and we become complacent, and we don't challenge the status quo, and we don't try to push the envelope and push the boundaries, and make people think about different perspectives. But that's what we're doing here.
I love to make people think. That's one of my favorite things I can do as a writer. It's kind of, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's kind of simpler to make them laugh. I think it's simpler to make them, be scared or creeped out or something like that. But to make people think, take something they've thought this whole way their whole life, and you show them how it could be different. That's one of my favorite things to do. You're talking about curing or getting rid of, people who are outside the box like us. Why can't you just cure whatever's wrong with them, like cure rage, like they did in 28 Days Later? That's part of the reason. That's one of my all-time favorite horror movies. Is they were trying to do something good. They're trying to cure rage, and well, shit, look what happened.
They spread it throughout the entire human civilization. Now
Yeah,
everybody's
what's
a
left
madman.
of it? Yeah.
It's the old the most evil acts in the world start with the greatest
Best intentions.
Best intentions. What's the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Yes.
And then you either, or my favorite, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Right on. One of my biggest fears right now is very practical, or some people might think it's not, and that's the shooting. Whether it's a mass shooting, whether it's a school shooting. Told you the thing I'm afraid of is something happening to my kids, and I understand that the statistics are still very low, but we hear about it all the time, and just because statistics are low, I mean the statistics of kids getting COVID and something bad happening is incredibly low. That doesn't mean I haven't put masks on my kids every time we go out. Of course I have, just in case. So yeah, that scares the shit out of me. Something.
Well, it's like sharks. You got a better chance of getting killed by a fucking vending machine than you do. I just did a fact on that. 2.7 people have been murdered by vending machines since 1973. You know how many people on average per year been killed by a shark? 1. So you got a better chance of getting killed by
that average is wrong, but still, that's besides the point.
It's Peter Benchley, the author of Jaws, once said, if I knew how sharks actually behaved when I wrote the book, I wouldn't have actually written the book.
And then he'd be broke, and that movie poster wouldn't be there.
Exactly. It was both a blessing and a curse, but at the same time, it's also like, you're not in the ocean every damn day. The moment you step into the ocean, those chances go from 1% to at least 30 to 40.
It depends. I'm not an ocean.
That's what I always hate about those. That's what I always hate about those stupid statistics. You have a better chance of getting struck by lightning than getting eaten by a shark. Yeah, no shit. There's more people on land than there are people in the ocean. Stupid.
And that is still part of the data.
I don't give a shit. You're gonna tell them, at least put that little cliff note in there. But keep in mind, there are more people on land than there are in the fucking ocean. If we lived in the ocean, I guarantee those stats would change.
Well, and that's the funny thing is that and fears change with the times. In the '80s, it was AIDS. That was the big thing. It was still the same thing in '90s. And the '90s were another interesting time about teenagers being involved in murder. Whether it be through mass shootings, whether it be through just fucking violence in the streets. Colts. There's a lot of that shit too. That kind of made it was big in the '70s, and then it made a comeback in the '90s.
Yeah,
I find that very interesting. I think it was the internet. The internet coming into its infancies at that point.
Well, you have that happening again. Actually, I mean, there's almost just this idea of people getting crazy ideas from just the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's
feeding off each other.
Yeah, there's just endlessness. And there's just also endless misinformation. But you could also just go and look up whatever the hell you want. And it's not
it's
really
also a question
there,
Another thing we also have to question is, how much did this stuff happen before the internet? Because don't forget, before the internet, shit like this still happened. You just didn't hear about it as much.
Could be.
So that's another thing to take into consideration.
And then it goes down to the perception of was it always as big as it, was it always as big? And is it still always as big? I think that there's, and I think that there's something interesting about a fear of a society of, it's very more sci-fi than horror, but it's a fear about society about what happens when you have everything. When you have instant gratification, when you have it, you don't have to earn it. It's again back to the cheap jump scares. If you don't have to earn shit, you don't have to earn that knowledge. You don't have to earn that, that time that you spent learning that knowledge. Is there any value to it? And what happens then? It's kind of now when people are just angrily, shouting at each other in the internet. The funny thing is, I've always noticed that it has so much more to do with something else going on in that person's life.
Oh, yeah.
They're deeply unhappy.
Yeah.
But if you get a whole generation,
There are a lot of unhappy people on cruise ships.
I believe that. I believe that. You know what? That's
Dealing with the public is.
you know what? That's a horror movie that never got covered. Horror movie on a cruise ship.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
It was
Please
called
no.
Deep Rising.
Oh yeah, damn. I love
Another movie with Benny.
I love that movie. It's
God,
so
that
it's
movie
so
is
it's so
great.
fucking sci-fi of the week, but I fucking love it.
It's still amazing.
But yeah, there's something to be said about that. Something about society, society and everything else, and dealing with that general public. And then the online dating thing, man. You had some stories back in the day before you met your gal.
Yeah.
So you had all kinds of crazy shit.
Yeah.
The deal with. So I think internet culture is not being as effective in horror, and I think that's something interesting to say. And that's, by the way, so much is, and that's part of horror too. That's really good. It's about conquering your fears, and about about being a triumph over it. Most horror movies, man, are the final girl in a horror movie. It's about triumph over evil. You find the best parts of humanity in the darkest places. And nobody now is willing to face the darkness and go, yeah, this is fucked up. Let's talk about it. Because it's interesting.
I totally agree.
offensive.
And actually, really, I think it goes back to that movie we saw about the school shooting. That's such a problem in our society, but it's like people were scared to make that movie even, because heaven forbid you talk about this issue and you show how truly scary that is for these kids. I think it's almost like we're not willing to take those risks. Even with, there was that one movie a while back about, like, friend requests. There was a lot of different, like, Facebook friend movies, like, it goes awry and it doesn't end up being what you thought. But even then, they kind of missed, I think, just the idea of the true fear of being online with all these people you don't know and what could they possibly do. I haven't seen a movie that's really done that yet.
That'd be something to explore. It's
Yeah.
very scary if you think about it.
The
It could get scary.
Yep.
honesty. Nobody's honest. It's an important thing. You gotta be honest.
I think we're good for final thoughts.
I
We've been
think
going
so,
a little
too.
long on this one. but,
Yeah.
This was a very good conversation, I think.
Oh, I agree
I
100%.
think this is one of our best podcasts in a while.
Yeah, it feels good to be back to long form.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, Brennan, final thought. Hey, well, you're the leader of this discussion, so you got to go around.
Zach, final thoughts.
Squirrels.
Mark, final thoughts.
Do what you love to do and don't give a shit about what anybody else thinks. That's my final thought.
Marcus, final thoughts.
Don't be afraid to take chances. Kind of the same thing. Don't hurt my kids. I'll fucking kill you.
Vinny and Hannah, final thoughts.
I don't know. I think it's like great. I'm stumped actually for the final thought. I don't know. Things need to get original again. Things need to stop being rehashed. Nostalgia's fun, but start putting some original ideas in there and don't be afraid to go against the grain, especially when it comes to major studios.
Right. And I agree with Marcus, what he said earlier about how he loves to make people think. I think we need to keep having really rich dialogue and really deep concepts and themes and motifs. We need to kind of bring back the art into horror and make people think.
When you said you agreed with Marcus, I'm like, wait, you have kids?
I was hoping you were going to say, yeah,
Vinny.
don't hurt his kids.
I was like, wait, Vinny, you have kids? Holy shit! Why didn't we know?
Anyway, my final thought.
Oh,
My final thought would be you're not impressing anybody by pretending nothing scares you, that movies can't creep you out. Sit back and enjoy the ride.
Nice.
You're just cheating yourself out of a good time.
All you need to do is have a good time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Nightmares Podcast. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, we are on video now. Yeah. You can listen to all previous episodes of the Nightmares Podcast wherever podcasts are available. Also be sure to follow us on social media at Midwest Horror Network on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and
Slasher.
And of course, if you are watching this on YouTube, if you can stab that like button, smash that subscribe, and click that little dingy bell to be notified every time we drop amazing content right here on MHN. We have a brand new episode of Living Nightmares, episode number 4. Please go check it out. It is fantastic. We all worked our asses off on it. Everyone at this table, and including Vinny over there at the tech booth, worked incredible. And Hannah was a great emotional support because it was a really, really fucking stressful time. We appreciate you all so much for checking out this, and we will see you next time on the Nightmares Podcast.